Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never asked for a new beginning, and if I'm being completely honest, I never forgave my parents for forcing one on me. Before the move, my life wasn't perfect, but at least it was familiar. I had friends I'd grown up with since kindergarten, a neighborhood where people actually knew my name and streets that felt like home. When my parents said we were moving to a small town called Ashton Ridge, somewhere tucked between long stretches of farmland and forest, I felt like my whole world was being ripped apart. We moved on a Wednesday afternoon in late September, with dry brown leaves drifting across the highway and the sky hanging low with that heavy mid-fall gloom. My mom kept saying, "You're gonna love it out there. It's quieter, safer, better for all of us." But I wasn't buying any of it. My dad tried a different tactic, nudging my shoulder and smirking as he drove. "Hey, look at it this way," he said. "New house, new school, fresh start." "Yeah," I muttered, staring out the window. "That's exactly what I'm scared of." By the time we reached Ashton Ridge, my stomach was twisted in knots. The town looked old, not in the charming, historic way, but in the neglected, peeling paint way. A single grocery store, a diner, a gas station, and one long road that cut through the center like a scar. The houses sat far apart, half hidden behind trees, like they were trying to avoid being seen. Our new house wasn't terrible. Bigger than our old one, sure, a bigger yard, bigger rooms. But bigger didn't matter when everything else felt so small. Loneliness hit me before I even stepped into my new bedroom. School was hell. I walked the halls feeling like I was glowing neon. New kid, outsider, don't talk to him. No one looked my way. No one smiled. I ate lunch alone for 4 straight days. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that things would change. But every night I'd lie awake and think, what if they don't? What if this is my life now? By the start of my 3rd week, I was so depressed I barely spoke at dinner anymore. But that Monday, everything shifted. A group of 4 kids called me over during lunch. I recognized their faces, mostly because they were loud, the kind of teens who walked like they owned the place. The one who waved me over wore a beat-up leather jacket and had the kind of swagger that screamed trouble. His name was Jackson, lean, sharp-featured, with this half-smile that made you unsure whether he liked you or was laughing at you. Beside him was Trip, a quiet kid with messy blonde hair and a twitchy leg. Then Liam, who always had headphones around his neck. And Ryder, who looked like he wasn't afraid of anything. Jackson patted the seat beside him. "Yo, new kid," he said. "Come on. Nobody should eat alone." I was nervous enough to choke, but I sat. They asked me where I was from, what music I liked, if I played games, normal stuff. And even though I felt like I was on trial, it felt good. It felt like someone finally saw me. By Friday of that week, Jackson leaned over the table and said, "We're heading out to the tracks tonight, you coming?" I blinked. "The what?" Ryder smirked. "Old railroad bridge outside town. Everyone hangs there on Fridays." Jackson added, "Chill spot, man. We drink, smoke, talk crap, whatever. You should roll through." For the first time in weeks, happiness cracked through my loneliness. I tried not to grin like an idiot. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I can come." After school, my nerves were buzzing. I couldn't believe I had actual plans. I got on the bus with this dumb, excited smile I was trying to hide. That's when someone sat beside me. I smelled him before I saw him. A mix of sweat, old denim, and something damp, like he'd walked through rain that morning. He had messy orange hair, freckles, and a hoodie that looked older than both of us. He cleared his throat. "You're the new kid, right?" I nodded, trying not to make a face. "Name's Rowan," he said. I heard you're going to the tracks tonight." I stiffened. "Yeah. Why?" Rowan swallowed like he was scared. "Don't go." I almost laughed. "Why not?" He wiped his palms on his jeans. He looked terrified, like genuinely terrified. I overheard them talking today," he whispered. "Jackson was joking about pushing someone off. Said the drop would scare the hell out of them and that the river's shallow enough to stand in." My stomach tightened. He kept going. I think they were talking about you," I snapped. All the fear I'd been feeling for weeks blew into anger. "Dude, what the hell is your problem?" I hissed. "You don't even know me." Rowan stammered. "I'm just trying to help." "No," I cut him off. "You're trying to screw things up. Leave me alone." His face fell. He muttered something I didn't catch, then forced his way out of the seat and moved to the back. But the damage was done. All night his words kept replaying in my head. Push someone off. Shallow water. They were talking about you. By the time I was supposed to leave, panic won. I stayed home. Monday morning, the guys cornered me at school. Jackson folded his arms. "You said you were coming." Yeah, I know, I'm sorry," Ryder scoffed. "We waited for like an hour, dude." Tripp shook his head. "Kinda messed up, man." Then Jackson looked at me with that cold, disappointed glare that hits harder than yelling. "You're good, but don't sit with us anymore." And just like that, I was alone again. Later at lunch, Rowan walked up with this hopeful smile. "Hey, you wanna—" "No," I snapped. "Don't sit here." He froze. I'll never forget the way his face sank. He backed away silently, and I watched him sit alone at a table near the windows. God, I was a jerk. A week later, another transfer student joined our grade. Eric Caldwell Tall, curly-haired, wore band tees, and had an easy smile. He seemed like someone I might have actually gotten along with. I sat with him at lunch on his first day. We talked about music, video games, and how small-town kids acted like they'd lived the same life forever. But the next day, Jackson, Ryder, Tripp, and Liam waved him over, and he went. Just like that. The cycle repeated. I lost him before I ever really had him. That Friday night, while lying in bed, I stared at my ceiling, wishing Rowan had never warned me. I blamed him for everything. I wanted to punch him, scream at him, blame him for a decision I made. It was easier than admitting I was scared Sunday morning felt wrong. The streets were empty. No kids on bikes, no dog walkers, not even cars on the main road. The whole town felt like it was holding its breath. When my mom came home from the store, she looked pale, panicked. She called my dad to the kitchen and told me to go upstairs. But I stopped on the stairs and listened. The words were faint, but clear enough. "Found a body and out by the woods. They think it's one of the kids." My whole body froze. I didn't know who, I didn't know how. But something in my gut told me this was tied to the tracks. Monday morning, the principal called the entire school into the gym. Everyone filed in, except 4 people. Jackson, Ryder, Tripp, Liam. I sat on the bleachers, heart pounding. The principal cleared his throat, face tight. "Students, it is with deep sadness that I inform you that a 10th grader passed away this weekend. The student's identity will be withheld until the family has been notified. If anyone has information, please speak to the resource officer immediately." Gasps echoed. A girl burst into tears. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I already knew something in me already knew. Within days, everything unraveled. The boy found near the river was Eric Caldwell, the new kid. He died under the old railroad bridge, broken legs, broken arm. Drowned in shallow water because he couldn't crawl out. At first, people said it was drugs, an accident, a dare gone wrong. But then the police arrested Jackson. Tripp cracked during questioning, and the story spilled out. They'd planned a prank. Shove the new kid off the bridge, scare him, laugh about it. But they misjudged the drop. Eric hit the wrong spot, shattered his legs, fell face first into the shallow water, drowned while the boys panicked. They tried to revive him. They failed. They ran. Left him there. One was charged with second-degree murder, one with aiding. The others walked free, but they were never the same again. Everyone knew what they'd done. People avoided them like they were cursed. And then there was Rowan, the kid I mocked, dismissed, humiliated, The kid who saved my life. I apologized. I cried when I did. He cried too. We became inseparable after that. Friends for nearly 20 years, until the night his car skidded on black ice 3 winters ago. He died on impact. I think about him every day. Not just because he was my closest friend, but because without him I would have been on that bridge. I would have died in that river. He didn't warn me because he wanted a friend. He warned me because he was a good person, a better person than I deserved at 15. I never thought a quiet town could swallow a part of your soul the way a city never could. When we lived in Manhattan, way back when my wife and I were still scrambling through NYU, noise was just oxygen car horns, sirens, subway screeches, the rumble of trucks early in the morning. It was chaotic, but it didn't scare me. Not the way silence eventually did. Back then we were living in a shoebox apartment near campus, eating late-night takeout and worrying about exams. If you told me I'd eventually end up in the kind of small western New York town where people used phrases like "folks around here," unironically, I'd have laughed. My wife, Lila, always dreamed of quiet, but I only dreamed of her, so quiet came with the package. We stayed in Tribeca for almost a decade, even through the insanity of raising our first kid there. Rent was a disaster. Space was a joke, but somehow it felt safe. Safe in a loud way. Safe in a someone's always awake and watching way. But the day our son Liam turned 9, I remember looking out our apartment window and watching him dodge a cyclist, a stroller, and a delivery guy in the span of 10 seconds. And I realized, Tribeca wasn't made for kids. Not really, not the way we wanted. So we started searching, and searching, and searching. After months of looking at homes around Rochester, Buffalo, and places no city person can pronounce right on the first try, we ended up moving to a tiny town called Hawthorne Ridge. 1 grocery store, 1 diner, 1 gas station, 1 small middle school. Blink while driving through and you miss half of it. At the time, it felt like the right decision. Sometimes the right decision ends up haunting you anyway. 2 years after the move, we had our second child, our daughter Nora, a squirmy little firecracker with lungs like a stadium speaker. By then, Liam was almost 12 and had finally made his first close friend in the new town, a wiry, energetic kid named Colby Hartman. Colby was, well, character doesn't even cover it. That kid's imagination was on turbo mode, 24/7. Mr. Lopez, aliens landed in my backyard. I need Liam ASAP. Sir, we found a portal behind the tool shed. Could you please send Liam over? The squirrels mutated again. He was dramatic, theatrical, loud, and honestly, the kind of kid who makes childhood feel like childhood. Liam loved it. He loved having a friend who wasn't embarrassed to act like a kid. After struggling so long to fit in here, he had finally found someone who treated him like an equal. All summer they biked back and forth between our houses, saving imaginary kingdoms, launching imaginary rockets, and battling imaginary monsters. And every time Colby called, I played along. Partially because it was adorable, partially because it brought Liam something he had missed since the move. Belonging. But one hot July afternoon changed everything. I was washing bottles at the kitchen sink, half listening to a Mets game on the radio, when Liam came downstairs holding the cordless phone with that little smile he always got when he talked to Colby. Dad, he said, I'm gonna meet Colby at the creek. He said there's a man down there giving out gold coins if we go on a quest with him. I turned off the water and looked at him. A man? I repeated. Yeah, just part of the game, like a quest giver. He said it casually, like it made perfect sense. But here's the thing. Never, not once in all their wild scenarios had the mission ever involved an actual person. It was always aliens or pirates or robots or vampires. Never a human. Never someone offering a reward. Dad brain kicked in hard. I dried my hands. Hey, buddy. Colby didn't say he actually saw anyone, right? Liam shrugged. He didn't say he didn't. That bothered me. Let me ask you again. I said gently. Is the man real or pretend? Liam frowned and thought about it longer than I wanted him to. Probably pretend, he said. Colby makes stuff up all the time. But the uncertainty, that pause, burned a hole in my stomach. So when Liam went back upstairs, I grabbed my cell and called Colby's parents. His mom, Karen, picked up. Hey Karen, it's David, I said. Is Colby there? No, he left about 20 minutes ago, she said. He told us he was biking to your house, though. Did he get there already? My chest tightened. No, I said. He said he was meeting Liam at the creek. He didn't stop here. Silence. Oh, she finally said uneasily. That's strange. Karen is normally a calm woman, but I could hear the edge rising in her voice. I didn't want to set off alarm bells prematurely, but I also couldn't ignore the warning crawling up my spine. I'll take Liam down there and check, I told her. We'll find him. Please call us when you do. She didn't even try to hide the fear. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and told Liam to put on his sneakers. He groaned, confused. Dad, why are you coming with me? Just want to stretch my legs, I lied. And it's hot out, don't want to lose you out there. He rolled his eyes, but his eyes also softened. He's a good kid, a patient kid. He didn't question me again. The creek was only a 10-minute walk from our house, tucked behind a patch of wild, overgrown parkland, the kind of place that feels innocent in the daytime and unsettling the second the sun dips. We reached the clearing. No Colby. We were early, sure, but still. His bike wasn't there, which was a red flag. Colby was always early, and he would have stopped at our house first. Something was wrong. Dad, why are you looking around like that? Liam asked. I didn't answer right away. I scanned the tree line, scanned the bushes, scanned the footbridge, scanned every damn shadow, nothing. Just checking the area, I said. You know, just making sure it's safe. Liam huffed. Dad, there's no guy. It's pretend. I know, I said, smiling tightly. Just humor me. We waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Still nothing. And that's when unease turned into alarm. Come with me, I said, motioning for Liam to follow as we walked past the clearing toward the overgrown side path. Dad, what is going on? He finally asked the question he had been holding back. I stopped walking. I'm worried about Colby, I admitted, and saying it out loud made it feel real. We kept going, birds chirping, water trickling, a faint breeze, too normal, too quiet. Then Liam stopped suddenly. Dad, look. I followed his gaze and felt my heart sink. Something metallic glinted under a dense bush. We walked closer. Liam crouched, grabbed it, pulled it free. It was Colby's bike, half buried under the brush like someone had shoved it there deliberately, and that's when the world tilted. Liam stared at the bike, confusion shifting into fear. Dad, why would anyone put it here? He already knew the answer. He just didn't want to say it. I started calling out, Colby, Colby, hey bud, where are you? Nothing. Dad, Liam's voice cracked. And then, I saw it. A small sneaker, brown and blue. Half hidden between cattails at the water's edge, I froze. Not because I thought he was dead, but because the world suddenly wasn't safe anymore. The monster under the bed had crawled into daylight. Liam, I said quietly, listen to me. He looked at the shoe, then at me. His face collapsed. Dad, what? Don't look at it. Don't think about it. We're going to get help. I grabbed his wrist, not hard, just firm, and we ran. We ran all the way back to the Hartman's house. Karen opened the door and collapsed when she saw our faces. Where's my son? She cried. We don't know yet, I said, voice shaking, but call 911 right now. She screamed for her husband and he bolted out the door with me while she called. The rest of that night was a blur of police cars, flashlights, dogs, drones, shouting, crying, panic. They searched the whole park, The creek, the woods, the road, everything. They found nothing. Not the boy, not his backpack, not his phone, not his shirt. Nothing except the bike and the shoe. As if something had plucked him straight out of the world. In the days that followed, Hawthorne Ridge turned into a town under siege. Kids weren't allowed out alone. Parents walked in groups. The diner closed early. People locked doors they never used to lock. But none of that mattered. Because Colby was gone, Karen stopped eating. Her husband stopped sleeping. They sold their house 6 months later. My son? Liam unraveled. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't go outside without panicking. He couldn't walk near water. He couldn't look at the creek ever again. He blamed himself for saying yes to the quest. He stopped being a kid, and we realized we had ruined his childhood twice. Once by moving him away from home, and again by bringing him somewhere that stole his best friend. We moved away a year later to a different town entirely. Different schools, different neighbors, different everything. But trauma has a long memory. Sometimes, when Liam is sleeping, he still screams. Sometimes when I drive past a lake, my hands go cold on the wheel. Sometimes, even now, when I'm walking with Nora, I catch myself checking behind every tree, every bench, every car, every shadow. Because I still picture that shoe, half submerged, placed carefully, like someone wanted it to be found. To this day, no one knows what happened to Colby Hartman. No one knows who the man by the water really was, or if the kids actually saw someone, or if someone had been watching them all summer long. But I know this. Silence is not peaceful. It's a predator. It waits until you trust it, and then it takes something from you that you never get back. I didn't think moving to Eastfall would mess with my head the way it eventually did. When I packed up my life in my tiny hometown of Pine Knoll, I thought the worst part of my new beginning would be adjusting to a bigger place with louder streets, different faces, and grocery stores that closed at midnight instead of 7 p.m. But what really got to me wasn't the city itself. It was the fact that I had no idea who I was living above. I grew up in Pine Knoll, population 3,000 on a good day. Folks there waved at each other even when they didn't know the person they were waving at. My mom used to say, if you sneeze on Main Street, 10 people will text you, bless you, before you get home. But when she got sick in 2015, everything changed. I spent 2 years taking care of her until she passed from a long, ugly fight with pancreatic cancer. Dad moved to Florida 3 months later to get away from the cold, but we both knew it was to escape the memories I tried to stay. Really, I did. But every corner of that town reminded me of her. The diner she used to take me to. The church she dragged me to every Sunday, even when I pretended to be sick. Her old car still parked in our gravel driveway because I didn't have the heart to sell it. After 2 years of feeling like a ghost in my own life, I finally said, enough. My friend from high school, Jenna, had been living in Eastfall for years. She told me it was the kind of place where nobody gives a damn what you're doing, which sounded like heaven after Pine Knoll. I found a cheap 2-story rental on Willowton Avenue. 1 apartment downstairs, 1 upstairs. I'd be downstairs. A guy named Raymond Fields lived upstairs. That name. I didn't know then how much I'd come to fear hearing it. The place was old, 1940s brickwork, creaky stairs, a tiny fenced backyard with 2 trash bins for the 2 units. The landlord said there were a couple quirks, which was code for the heater kicks like a mule and the windows don't latch right. But it was mine. The first night I moved in, Jenna came over with takeout and beer. Damn, this is cute, she said, looking around. Like, depressing cute indie movie cute. Thanks, I muttered, dropping onto the couch. You met the upstairs dude yet? Nope, haven't seen him. She shrugged. Just don't blast music past 10. Folks in Eastfall call the cops fast. We laughed. We ate. And for the first time in years, I felt like life might start making sense again. But that first week, I noticed something odd about the upstairs guy. Or more accurately, how silent his apartment was. No walking, no TV, no shower running. Nothing. It was like living under a ghost. It was my third week in East Fall, a warm June evening. I'd just finished washing dishes and was taking my kitchen trash out to the backyard bins like I always did. I stepped outside into the cool air, the streetlights glowing faintly behind the fence. As I opened the lid of the bin, a voice behind me said, calm as anything, "Don't move." I froze. At first I thought someone was messing with me. Kids, maybe. Drunks. I turned around, half smiling, ready to say, "Dude, seriously?" But the words died in my throat, because leaning over the fence at the back of the yard was a man, late 40s, black tactical vest, helmet, a modern rifle pointed straight at my chest, not a pistol, not a taser, a full-length assault rifle with a mounted flashlight and optic. My hand shot into the air before I even realized what I was doing. What the hell? Please don't shoot, man." The man didn't yell. He didn't bark orders. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Keep your hands up, all right? Nice and high." I started trembling. My legs felt like they weren't mine anymore. My chest squeezed so tight I could barely breathe. "What is going on?" I whispered. The guy tilted his head slightly. "I want you to lift your shirt up." "What? Why? Do it now." His voice never rose. He didn't need to. The gun did all the talking. With shaking fingers, I lifted my shirt, exposing my torso. "Turn around," he said. I did. Slower. I turned again, slower this time, praying I wouldn't get shot for moving wrong. "Good," he said. "What's your name?" "Noah," I croaked. Noah Calder. "Noah, I want you to walk toward me slowly. Keep your hands up. You understand?" "Yes, yeah, okay." I walked toward the back gate, my legs wobbly, my chest tight. The guy never took the gun off me. When I reached the gate, he said, "Stop, now take the latch off. Real slow. Don't pull the door open." I did it. The latch clicked open. "Good. Step back for me, Noah. Step back now." I stumbled backward, and then it happened. 5 or 6 heavily armed police officers flooded through the gate like a damn tidal wave, helmets, rifles, body armor. They moved completely silent except for their boots. One of them carried a battering ram. They rushed past me and up the outside steps toward the apartment, above mine, and then, go, go, go. Armed police. The door upstairs crashed open with a sound that shook the backyard. I flinched so hard I almost fell over. The officer who'd held me at gunpoint grabbed my arm and pulled me through the back gate into the alley. "Move, Noah, go!" Another officer yelled from the street, "Run to me, let's go, bud." I sprinted, stumbling, adrenaline tearing through me like my body was on fire. When I reached the cops in the street, they surrounded me, forming a wall between me and the backyard. A female officer grabbed my shoulder. "You're safe. You're safe, okay? You're not under arrest. You're just being detained for questioning under the National Security Act." The what? "It's just procedure, you're not in trouble. But we need to talk." I was shaking so hard I couldn't speak. Behind me I heard shouting, stomping, breaking furniture, someone yelling, "Clear!" Another yelling, "Check the closet!" It felt like I'd fallen into the middle of an action movie. Except this wasn't a movie. This was my home. They didn't take me to an interrogation room. They took me to a family-style lounge with couches and vending machines. The officer across from me, Detective Riley, spoke softly, like he was trying not to spook a wounded animal. "Noah, we're going to ask you some questions about your upstairs neighbor." "I barely know the guy," I said, voice cracking. "That's okay. Just tell us whatever you can." What did he do? Why are you guys raiding his apartment with rifles?" Riley paused. "We can't disclose specifics yet. But this is a high-risk investigation." I swallowed. "Is it terrorism?" Another pause. "Just answer the questions, son." They asked everything. Did you ever hear him come or go? Did he talk to you? Did he have visitors? Did you smell any strange chemicals? Did he use the front or back entrance more? Did you ever hear machinery, power tools, grinding noises? I told them the truth. I barely ever heard the guy. It was like nobody lived upstairs. When the interview ended, Detective Riley stood. "You're free to go, Noah. You're not a suspect." "But should I go home? You guys are still, up there. You're clear to return. We won't be entering your apartment." Great. So the literal SWAT team stormed the place above mine, but apparently I was good to go back to my Netflix and leftovers like nothing happened. The raid hit the news fast. And when I say fast, I mean by the time I got home, my phone was blowing up like a grenade. "Yo, is this your street? Dude, WTF? Is that your house on Channel 9? Bro, be honest. Your neighbor a terrorist?" I sat on my couch, shaking, watching a live reporter standing at the corner of Willowton Avenue. People gathered outside, blue lights flashed through my windows. I felt like the world had tilted, and for the next hours I kept thinking, that guy lived literally 10 feet above my bed. 10 feet. One floor. A staircase. And I didn't know a damn thing about him. Over the next few days, details leaked. The FBI, DHS, state police. They were all involved. The operation was labeled delicate because they believed the suspect might blow the place if alerted. Meaning, if I had walked out 30 seconds later, if he had heard them approaching, if anything had set him off, we'd all have been vapor. I found out later the man upstairs was suspected of helping a bombing plot involving an out-of-state extremist cell. I didn't know if he was arrested, I didn't know if he ran. I didn't know if the raid found what they were looking for. All I knew was that I'd been living under someone capable of something horrific. Someone who never spoke, never made noise, never turned on the TV. Because he wasn't living normally. He was hiding. He was planning. He was waiting. A week later, the landlord called. "Noah, I know this is a stressful time, but with the situation upstairs, the property's being temporarily shut down for investigations, we'll refund your month and help relocate you." I didn't argue. I already knew I couldn't sleep there again. That night, I packed my bags. Jenna helped. When we finished, she hugged me tight. "You okay?" she whispered. I didn't answer. Because as we walked out, I looked up at the dark, empty window of the upstairs apartment. And for the first time since the raid, I realized just how close I'd come to losing everything. Not just my home, not just my safety, my life. I moved across town within a week. A safer place. Busier. Brighter. But even now, every time I take the trash out at night, every time I hear a noise through the wall, every time a stranger knocks on my door, I freeze because I learned something in Eastfall. You can think you know your neighbors. You can think you live in a quiet street. You can think your life is yours, but you never really know who's living right above you or what they're capable of. And some nights when the air is still, I swear I hear the memory of that man's voice behind me. "Don't move." I never thought moving to a new town at 27 would feel like rewinding my entire life back to zero. But that's exactly what happened when I left the noise of Chicago and drove 5 hours west into a place called Hawthorne Bend, a small, quiet Illinois town with a population barely pushing 8,000 and the kind of slow, empty streets that make newcomers feel like they're being watched. I moved there because I needed a restart. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. In reality, I was running. From a relationship that left me hollow. From a job that chewed me up. From the version of myself I didn't want to be anymore. My dad used to tell me, "Son, when you don't know what you're chasing, you end up chasing ghosts." I never understood what he meant until I stepped out of my car that first evening in Hawthorne Bend, and the breeze felt colder than it should have been, even for early fall. My realtor, a short woman with big glasses named Marla, handed me the keys to my rented duplex and said, "Welcome to Hawthorne Bend. Honey people here keep to themselves, so you'll fit right in." She smiled like it was a joke, but it didn't feel like one. The duplex sat on the edge of a street called Red Willow Lane, lined with maple trees that looked beautiful during the day, but unsettling as the sun went down, like their branches held secrets. Across the street stood a house that instantly caught my eye. A pale yellow two-story with a sagging porch, a half-broken swing, and curtains that never seemed to move, even when the wind blew hard. The kind of house you'd expect to see in the background of an old horror film. Before unloading my boxes, I noticed the front door of that house creak open. A woman, probably in her early 30s, stepped out holding a mug. She didn't wave, didn't nod, just stared at me like she knew exactly who I was. "Evening," I offered. She didn't reply. She just turned around and went back inside. I remember whispering under my breath, "Okay, that's a warm welcome." But I brushed it off. New town, new people. Maybe that's just how folks acted here. I had no idea that within weeks, that same woman would be the reason I'd lie awake every night, terrified to even blink. That first week was uneventful. I got groceries, unpacked, started remote work again, and tried to adjust to the silence. The kind of silence that felt like it wasn't empty, but waiting. Every evening around 8 p.m., I'd hear footsteps outside, slow, crunching footsteps on gravel. I assumed kids walking by, until I looked out once and saw no one, not a single soul, just the wind moving dead leaves. One night, while taking my trash bins to the curb, I saw my neighbor again, the woman from the yellow house. She was standing on her porch, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold, but the temperature was warm. "Hi again," I called. "Sorry if my moving in caused any disturbance or... You shouldn't be here." The way she said it, flat, emotionless, made the hair on my arm stand up. Sorry? I'm renting legally. Papers all clear." "That's not what I mean." She tightened her grip around herself. "They don't like newcomers on this street." "Who?" Her eyes flicked toward the dark backyard behind my duplex. "You'll see." Then she went inside and shut the door. I stood there like an idiot, holding 2 trash bags and wondering if I'd just met the town crazy. I didn't know then that everything she said was literal. About 12 days after I moved in, things escalated. It started with a sound, soft but clear. Knock, knock, knock. At 1:37 a.m., I sat up in bed instantly. My room was dark, except for the glow from my Wi-Fi router. I listened hard. Then again, knock, knock, knock. This time louder. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and tiptoed to the window near my door. But there was no one outside. Just empty street. No cars passing. No porch lights on. "Probably some teenagers messing around," I muttered. But then it happened again the next night. And the one after that. Always 3 knocks. Always around the same time. Always no one in sight. By the 4th night, I was pissed. When the knocking came again, I rushed to the door and yanked it open. Nobody. But as I stepped onto the porch, a cold breeze hit me. Unnaturally cold, like winter air in the middle of fall. I heard something then. A whisper, right behind me. "Go home." I spun around. No one. But I wasn't alone, I could feel it. Heavy, like the air itself pressed down on me. I slammed the door shut and locked every latch. The next morning, while I was loading my car, a man from 2 houses down approached me. Tall, calm, maybe late 40s. He wore a flannel jacket and carried a steaming coffee in a metal thermos. "You must be the new guy," he said. "Name's Ellis." I let out a breath. A normal person. Finally. "Yeah, I'm Tyler." "You sleeping okay?" he asked casually. I froze. Why do you ask?" He shrugged. "Folks on Red Willow Lane sometimes don't get the best rest. Old street, old noises, town's got a history." "What kind of history?" He hesitated. "That yellow house across from you? The one with the woman?" "Yeah." "Don't bother her too much. She's been through hell. Name's Lori. Lost her husband a few years back." I nodded, remembering her warning. "She told me something weird," I said. Something about newcomers. Ellis cut me off. Yeah, she does that. Don't take it to heart. He took a sip of coffee. But listen, if you hear unusual stuff at night, don't open the door. Just ignore it. I frowned. Why? What's going on around here? He looked at me with eyes that carried too many secrets. This town remembers things, even when people don't. Then he walked away, leaving me more confused than before. A week later, Hawthorne Bend changed forever. I was driving back from the grocery store when I saw flashing lights near the river bridge, police cars, county trucks, and a small crowd gathering. Curiosity got the better of me, so I parked on the side and walked over. Someone whispered behind me. They found another one. A county officer was taping off a section of the riverbank while two paramedics zipped a black body bag. Jesus, I muttered. A man beside me whispered, young girl, probably not older than 20. I swallowed hard. What happened? Same thing that's been happening, the man said. You must be new, huh? I nodded. Bodies show up every few years, he continued. Women, young, half of them never even reported missing. I felt ice move down my spine. Ellis suddenly appeared next to me. Tyler, he said quietly. Let's go. You don't want to see this. What's happening in this town? I asked, voice shaking. Ellis looked at the river like he was staring at a memory. Hawthorne Bend looks quiet from the outside, but this place, it keeps its dead close. That night, around 9:15 p.m., someone knocked on my door again. 3 knocks, but this time, it wasn't the usual eerie silence afterward. I heard a voice. Tyler, open up, please. It was Lori. I rushed to open the door. She looked terrified, eyes wide, breathing fast, shaking like she'd run for blocks. Lori, what's wrong? She stepped inside without asking and shut the door behind her. They're here tonight, she whispered. You need to stay inside. Don't look outside, don't respond, don't speak, not even if they say your name. Who? What are you talking about? She grabbed my wrist. The ones who knock. My blood went cold. Lori, what the hell is going on? When my husband died, she whispered. I thought it was suicide, everyone did. But I heard them knocking that night. And he opened the door, and... She covered her mouth, staring at the floor. They took him. Who took him? I demanded. She looked at me with a kind of fear that didn't look human. The ones that live between here and the river. At exactly 1:37 a.m., the knocking returned, this time louder, harder, violent. Knock, knock, knock. Lori grabbed my arm. Don't move, don't speak. The knocks continued faster, angrier. Then a voice came from outside, deep, wrong, like someone wearing a human voice like clothing. Tyler, we know you hear us. My mouth went dry. Lori shook her head violently, pleading silently. Don't answer them. But the voice continued. Open the door. You don't belong here. My heart pounded so loudly I thought I'd pass out. Then I heard footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps, moving around the side of my house toward my bedroom window. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then another whisper. Closer. Right outside the glass. Let us in. Lori gripped my wrist so hard her nails dug into my skin. Then, crack, my bedroom window spiderwebbed. Something slammed into it. Hard. I whispered, we need to call 911. They won't come, Lori whispered. Not here. Not at this hour. What do they want? You. Why me? Her answer was barely audible. Because you moved where someone else died. Someone the town never buried properly. My blood froze. She pointed trembling toward the floorboards near the hallway. They're under this street, they always have been. The window cracked again. This time pieces of glass fell inward. A gray, cold hand, thin, swollen, waterlogged, pushed through the broken gap. Lori screamed, Go! Now! We sprinted through the back door into the yard. I could hear footsteps behind us, wet, dragging footsteps like someone pulling themselves across gravel. "Don't look back," Lori yelled. We ran through the yard, across the fence, straight into Red Willow Lane. The streetlights flickered violently. At the end of the block, Ellis stood waiting beside his truck, waving frantically. "Get in! Move!" We jumped inside. As Ellis floored the gas, I saw them shapes emerging from between the houses. Bodies, bloated, pale, soaked. Water dripping from their clothes. Their eyes black and empty. One of them whispered my name again in a voice that didn't belong to the living Tyler. I turned away, shaking uncontrollably. We stopped near the abandoned grain mill outside town. Ellis turned the engine off and faced us. "You weren't supposed to move on to Red Willow," he said quietly. "That street, it was built over the old river path. The town rerouted the water back in the 1940s after a string of drownings." "Drownings?" I whispered. "Not accidents," Ellis said. "Girls, young women, all of them taken at night. Folks back then didn't know what to call it, so they blamed the river, said it was hungry." "That's ridiculous," I muttered. Ellis shook his head. "Maybe, but the bodies kept showing up, and the town learned to adapt." I stared at him. "Adapt how?" Ellis exhaled slowly. "We don't go out after midnight. Not on that street. And we sure as hell don't answer the knocking." My voice broke. "So they're, what, ghosts?" "Call them what you want," Ellis said. "But they take who they take. And they only target newcomers. People the town won't miss yet." "I felt sick," Lori whispered. "They came for my husband. And they'll come for you again." We stayed at the mill until sunrise. Then Ellis drove me back to my duplex so I could pack and leave town. But when we pulled up, everything looked normal. No broken window. No footprints. No damage. Like the night never happened. I stepped inside cautiously. The air was warm. Calm. Until I saw something sitting on my kitchen table. A river-soaked wallet. Not mine. Inside, the ID belonged to a man named Parker Hill, age 29, the same age I was. And the address? My duplex, my unit, my exact home. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Ellis froze. "That's the last guy who lived here." Lori's eyes filled with tears. "They left it for you." I backed away, heart slamming in my chest. Then the knocking came. Not outside. Not on the door. But underneath the floor. Knock, knock, knock. I ran out of that house and never looked back. I drove until Hawthorne Bend was nothing but a memory in the rearview mirror. A dark stain on the map I'd never return to. I didn't take any boxes, any clothes. Nothing. Some towns don't want newcomers. Some towns don't bury their dead. Some towns let them walk, and Hawthorne Bend is one of them. To this day, sometimes at night, even hundreds of miles away, I still hear 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. And a whisper that chills my blood. Come home. I moved to Rustwood, Ohio when I was 12. The kind of age where you're too old to cry about leaving your friends, but young enough to feel every inch of that loss like somebody cut the floor out from under you. My real name is Leo Hargrove, but everyone in my old town called me LJ. Rustwood called me the new kid for a solid 6 months. My dad, Patrick, was the one who made the call. He said he needed a fresh start, but adults say that the same way they say, "We're taking a break," or "We're better as friends." It means something messy underneath that they don't want to explain. My mom just nodded along like she'd already fought that battle and lost. We left Columbus on a muggy August morning, packed into a beat-up SUV that smelled like French fries and moving tape. But after 2 hours, something shifted. The air got cleaner, the roads got emptier, and trees started replacing billboards. Rustwood sat on the edge of nowhere, tucked behind cornfields and a gas station that still sold VHS rentals Dad pulled onto our new street. Hawthorne Bend, which was quiet in that way that makes you think you're either very safe or very observed. "Looks peaceful," Mom said. Dad nodded. I stared at the house. It was bigger than our old one. Too big. 2 floors, a wide yard, and old brick like it had been standing there since the beginning of time. Dad kept saying, "We got it at a steal of a price," but even at 12, I knew houses aren't cheap without a reason. But I didn't question it. Not then. We met the neighbors on day 2. A short, sunburned woman named Joanne walked over with a pie like we were in some Hallmark movie. "You folks moving into the Hartwell place?" she asked. "The Hartwell place?" Dad repeated. "Yeah." She paused, then forced a smile. "Well, welcome to Rustwood." She didn't elaborate. That was clue number 1. Clue number 2 happened 3 nights later. Dad shook me awake around 1:30 a.m. "Leo, get up," he whispered. His voice wasn't angry. It was nervous. I followed him downstairs. Mom was already at the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek out. "What?" I asked. Dad pointed toward the backyard, his jaw stiff. And there, in the faint glow of the street lamp, lay something that absolutely did not belong there. A mound. Dark. Lumpy. Fresh. "Is that a dead animal?" I asked. Mom shook her head slowly. "No, it's not an animal." Dad exhaled through his nose. "Nope, that's human." I blinked. "Human what?" Mom looked away. Dad didn't. "Shit," he said. "Literal, actual human shit. In our yard." I gagged so hard I saw stars. Mom whispered. "Not again." "Again?" I snapped. "This happened before?" Dad didn't answer, but the way his eyes locked onto that pile told me everything. By the end of the week, it had happened 4 more times. Always at night. Always in a different spot. Always deliberate. Dad tried to downplay it at first. "Probably some sick prank," he muttered. But Mom contradicted him in the kitchen one morning. "This is targeted, Pat," she said quietly. "Nobody else on the street is dealing with this." I overheard every word. Dad sighed. "I know." Then he added something I'll never forget. "It's the same pattern as before." "Before what?" "Before we moved. Before we left Columbus. Before my family started acting like every night was a potential battle. Something had followed us, or someone had found us again. That night, Dad did something he hadn't done since Columbus. He sat on the porch with a baseball bat across his lap. Not a gun. Not yet. Just a bat. He told me to go to bed. I didn't. I sat by the window and watched his silhouette until my eyes stung. But around 3 a.m. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I heard was Mom screaming. Dad burst into the house with a look on his face like he'd seen a demon. "Call 911, he barked. Mom grabbed the phone. I stood frozen. I saw Dad's hands shaking. I saw dirt on his jeans. I saw something else too. Something small and metallic. He threw on the table a button. Old, rusted, with 2 holes. "Where'd that come from?" I asked. Dad swallowed hard. "He was wearing it." "Who?" Dad didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He just stared past me like the memory itself was clawing at his brain. "The man who was in our yard." Mom whispered into the phone. "Yes, Rustwood PD. Yes, he was naked. Yes, naked. No, we don't know him." "Dad," I said. "What did he look like?" Dad shook his head slowly. I don't know. I only saw his back. He had mud all over him. He climbed our fence like he'd done it before." Then he whispered, and he laughed. My spine locked. "What?" Dad looked more alive and terrified than I'd ever seen him. He laughed, Leo, like he knew I was watching, like he'd been waiting for me. 2 days later, Rustwood PD sent a deputy. He was tall, sun-spotted, and looked like he'd rather be fishing. "Y'all got varmints or something?" he asked. "Human ones," Dad snapped. The deputy shrugged like that wasn't even the weirdest thing he'd heard that morning, but then he said something strange. "You folks buying this place from the Marlins, right?" Mom nodded. The deputy breathed out through puffed cheeks. "Yeah, they had some problems." Dad stiffened. "What kind of problems?" The deputy shook his head like he'd said too much. "You'd have to ask him," They left town real quick. Then he leaned in, lowering his voice. If you see the man again, don't confront him. Call us, that's it. Got it? Dad didn't answer. I did. Yeah, I said. We got it. He nodded and left. When the door closed, Mom turned to Dad. Pat, they knew the previous owners knew. Dad rubbed his temples. Yeah, they did. Then I asked the question that had been burning through me for days. Dad, has this happened before? Back in Columbus? Dad froze. Mom's eyes widened, furious. You never told him? He didn't need to know. I need to know now, I shouted. Dad looked at me for a long time, then he said, yes, it happened before, but never this. Bold. The attacks, the intrusions, escalated. It started with the piles, then footprints, then the fence posts being loosened at night. One morning we found our back door unlocked, the same door Dad always double-checked. Another night, Mom found muddy handprints on the shed. But what changed everything was the note. Dad found it pinned under a rock on the porch. Ragged handwriting, crooked letters. Missed you. Mom's legs buckled. Dad tore the note in half like ripping paper could destroy the meaning behind it, I whispered. He followed us. Dad didn't respond. Because we all knew the answer. Dad bought a camera, a good one. He didn't sleep. He barely ate. He sat by the window every night with the bat next to him, snapping pictures whenever the motion light flickered. But the man, the intruder, was smart. He stayed in the blind spots. He ducked low. He moved like he knew the land better than we did. But on the 8th night, something finally changed. Dad yelled for Mom. I jumped out of bed and sprinted to the hallway. He's here, Dad cried, and I saw him too. A man, thin, covered in mud, hair matted to his shoulders, crawling along the edge of our yard like some feral animal. And yes, he was naked. Mom gasped, "Oh my God!" Dad shoved the door open. "Hey, you sick bastard!" he roared. He ran into the yard with the camera raised. "Pat!" Mom screamed. "Don't!" But Dad didn't stop. He snapped photo after photo, getting closer and closer. Then, in a split second, the man turned, and he sprinted at my father. Not ran, not panicked, charged. "Pat, back up!" Mom shrieked. Dad stumbled. The man slammed into him, grabbed the camera, and smashed it into the ground. Dad punched him in the jaw. The man laughed, actually laughed, grabbed Dad's shirt, and whispered something in his ear. I saw Dad's face drain of color. Mom yelled for me to call 911. The man lunged again. Dad swung the bat wildly. Neighbors yelled. Porch lights snapped on. Footsteps thundered across grass. The naked man bolted, climbing the fence in one movement and vanishing into the dark woods behind our house. The cops came. They found mudblood, footprints, and one perfect unbroken piece of film from the shattered camera. A close-up of the man's face. Gaunt, eyes too wide, mouth twisted in a grin that didn't belong to a human. Rustwood PD used the photo to make flyers. News stations picked it up. The town buzzed with warnings. And then, 3 days later, the cops came knocking. "Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, we need to talk." The man had been arrested, found sleeping under an overpass 50 miles away, but due to a clerical error, wrong date, wrong form, wrong signature, wrong God knows what, he was released the same day before anyone could interview him, before any mental health eval, before any fingerprints. Dad stared at the officer like he was joking. "You let him go?" Dad shouted. The officer swallowed. "We made a mistake." Mom screamed at him until her voice cracked. I sat on the couch shaking. Dad said only one thing. "We're done. We're leaving tonight." We didn't pack. We didn't clean. We didn't say goodbye. Dad grabbed what he could fit into the SUV. Mom grabbed the lockbox with our documents. I grabbed my backpack and nothing else. We drove. Past Rustwood. Past the county line. Past every place that felt even remotely familiar. Dad didn't stop until morning. I'm 25 now. Rustwood feels like a dream I shouldn't remember but can't forget. Last month, I went home to visit my parents. Dad was quieter than usual. Mom made me promise not to bring up what happened, but I asked anyway. Dad, did they ever find him? Dad stared at the table. He found us, he said softly. That's what you're really asking. I swallowed. Why us? Dad finally met my eyes. When you were a baby, he lived 2 houses down. He was always off, always watching. One night he tried to break into our old house. After that we moved, and then moved again, and he kept showing up, not right away. Sometimes years later, sometimes months, but always eventually. I felt my breath catch, so Rustwood wasn't random. Dad shook his head. He wasn't pooping in our yard because he was sick. He wasn't doing it to scare us. He was marking territory, telling us he was there, telling us he wasn't done. My chest tightened. Do you think he could come back again? Dad looked toward the window. I don't know, son, he said. But I still check the yard every night. I nodded slowly, because even after all these years, sometimes when I visit, at the edge of the grass, by the fence, I swear I still see footprints, fresh ones. I never believed that moving to a quieter town could ruin someone's life. Back then, after everything fell apart with Mom's health, all Dad wanted was a softer place somewhere with slower mornings, friendly neighbors, and a school that wouldn't call him every week about how far behind I was slipping. He called it a reset. I called it giving up. We left Pittsburgh behind on a gray September morning, the kind where the sky feels heavy, like it's deciding whether to cry or hold it in. Dad kept saying the air smelled cleaner out east, that New Hampshire was a hell of a change. But I sat in the passenger seat pretending to sleep so I wouldn't have to talk. The town we moved to was called Ashwood Ridge, and I swear the first time I saw that welcome sign, something in my stomach twisted like it was warning me. It wasn't fear, more like recognition, even though I'd never been there before. Dad noticed me staring at the sign. Looks nice, right? Kinda cozy. Yeah, I muttered. Cozy. But the truth was, the woods behind the sign were the darkest I'd ever seen. Even at noon, they swallowed up the sunlight like the trees were pulling it in. I told myself I was being dramatic, but the longer we stayed, the more I realized those woods weren't the problem. The people were. Our new house sat at the very end of a narrow road called Marrow Lane. Dad laughed when he saw the street sign. Who names a road after bones? That's metal as hell. Or creepy, I said. He snorted. Kiddo, everything's creepy to you. I didn't answer because he was half right. After Mom died, everything felt wrong in ways I couldn't explain. The house itself was weird, not old, not new. The frame looked maybe from the 60s, but someone had redone parts of it in a way that didn't match the rest. A modern porch bolted onto weathered siding, fresh shutters but cracked window frames, like someone tried to make it look inviting, but couldn't hide what it really was. A tall woman in a faded denim jacket was sweeping her driveway when we got out of the car. She stared a second too long before forcing a smile. You must be the Garlands, she said. I'm June Porter. Welcome to Marrow Lane. Dad shook her hand, doing that polite over-friendly thing he always did. You live next door? He asked. Since '09. She looked at me then. Her eyes softened. You're Evan, right? I froze. Dad hadn't introduced me yet. How'd you? The real estate agent mentioned a boy your age, she said quickly. Small town. You know how it is. I nodded, but something about her explanation didn't feel like the truth. Her gaze kept drifting over my shoulder to the tree line behind our house. She stared the way someone does when they're expecting to see something standing just inside the shade. Dad followed her eyes. Something wrong with the woods? June opened her mouth, paused, then smiled too brightly. No, just deer. Lots of deer out here. But the way she said it convinced me she wasn't looking for deer. She was watching for something else. Our first night in the house felt colder than it should have. Dad tried to cheer me up by unpacking the gaming console first. Priorities, he joked, tossing me the controller. School doesn't start until Monday. Let's break the world record for most irresponsible use of a Saturday. I managed to smile. Dad always tried. He just didn't know how to fix the kind of broken we'd become. Around 1:30 a.m., I went to refill my water bottle. The kitchen window faced the woods. No streetlights back there, just trees, packed tight like bodies in a crowd. And something moved between them. It wasn't big. It wasn't small. It was just a shape, humanish, standing very still. "Dad," I whispered. He was still awake in the living room. "What's up?" I didn't want him thinking I was spiraling again. And nothing, just checking something. He didn't push it. But the moment I turned away from the window, I heard it. A long, low whistle. Not a tune. Not anything musical. Just one note. Held. Held way too long. Held like whoever or whatever made it didn't need to breathe. I jolted and spun around. Nobody. Just the trees. The whistle stopped. Then came a soft tap. On the glass. Right in front of my face. I stumbled back, heart kicking against my ribs. But when I forced myself to look, nothing. Just my reflection. Or mostly my reflection. Because behind my shoulder, just barely visible in the glass, was a figure. Very tall. Very thin. Standing right at the edge of the woods. Watching the house. Watching me. I blinked and gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Ashwood Ridge Middle School looked like something out of a postcard, tiny brick building. Forest on all sides, American flag half faded from the sun. Dad dropped me off at the front curb. "You'll do fine," he said for the 100th time. "Sure," I muttered. "You want me to pick you up or you want to walk?" I hesitated. "Walk? On Marrow Lane? Through those woods?" "No. Pick me up." He nodded, like he expected that answer. Inside the school, the halls were lined with trophy cases full of photos teams, old class portraits, local award winners, but half the photos had missing faces. Not scratched out, not damaged, just blurred, like the camera forgot who it was supposed to capture. A girl with curly brown hair and a purple hoodie caught me staring. "You're the kid who moved into the Garland house, right?" I blinked. Yeah, I'm Evan." She didn't offer her name. She didn't smile. She just said, almost whispering, "You shouldn't live there." My stomach tightened. "Why not?" She looked around, checking if anyone could hear. "Bad things happen on that street." "What kind of bad?" "Just, don't stay out after dark," she said quickly. "And don't go near the woods behind your house." Before I could ask more, she walked away fast, almost running. That was the first actual conversation I had at that school. Everyone else reacted the same way the next few days. "Oh, Marrow Lane. That's where he lives? Why'd your dad pick that house?" I kept hearing the same sentence whispered like a curse. "The line runs behind that one." When I asked what the line was, nobody answered. Some walked away. Some looked scared. And one kid, a tall, pale boy with a Red Sox cap, leaned close and said, "Don't ask about the Ashwood line if you like sleeping." The way he said it made it clear. This wasn't a ghost story. It was a rule. By the third week, the whistling became a routine. Always late. Always one long note. Always from the woods. Sometimes it was closer. Sometimes farther. But always there. Dad didn't hear it. Or maybe didn't want to. One night, after the whistle stopped, I heard something else, leaves crunching. Very slow. Very intentional. Like footsteps. I grabbed my phone and quietly crept to the back window. Between two pines, I saw glowing eyes. Yellowish. Reflective. Animal? Maybe. But animals don't stand upright. And animals don't speak. Because the thing in the woods did. A low whisper drifted through the glass. "Eva on." My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. Something moved behind me. I spun. "Dad." "Jesus," I gasped. He raised his hands. "Sorry, kiddo. Didn't mean to scare you." I pointed to the trees. There was something out there. He looked, then looked again. then sighed. Evan, we talked about this. You get, I'm not imagining it. I snapped. Dad's face tightened, hurt flashing across it. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew the thought in his head. After your mom, your brain isn't the same. He was scared for me, but I was terrified for us. Come on, he said gently. It's late. Try sleeping. Try. The first snowfall came early. Ashwood Ridge looked postcard perfect. Too perfect. On a Saturday morning, Dad decided we needed to actually socialize before people think we're hermits. He drove us to Misty's Diner, a small local breakfast spot painted light blue with Christmas lights up year-round. Everyone stared when we walked in. Not subtle, not polite, just stared. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that said Tess led us to a booth. You folks are the ones living on Merrill Lane, right? She asked, placing menus in front of us. Dad nodded. Yep. House at the end. Tess sucked in a breath like she'd touched a hot stove. You, like it there so far? It's a roof, Dad said lightly. Tess hesitated, then said in a near whisper, well, if you ever hear something at night, just don't go outside. I froze. Dad laughed like he thought she was joking. You mean coyotes? Tess didn't laugh. No, not coyotes. Before we could ask more, a man sitting alone in the corner called out, Tess! Coffee! She scurried away. I turned to look at the man. He was staring directly at me. Not at Dad. At me. His face was weathered, cheeks hollow, beard patchy. His clothes looked worn, faded flannel, heavy boots. He had the kind of presence that sucked warmth out of the room. When he saw me looking, he crooked a finger. Dad noticed. You know him? No, I whispered. But the man motioned again. Slow, beckoning. Dad frowned. Stay here, I'll handle it. No, I said quickly. Don't. But Dad was already up. He walked over to the man's table. Their conversation was short. Dad came back stiff, jaw clenched. What'd he say? I asked. Dad didn't answer. Dad? He stared ahead for a moment before muttering. Finish your pancakes. We're leaving after this. He didn't speak again the entire drive home. And that night, the whistling came twice. On Monday, the girl in the purple hoodie found me at lunch. She sat across from me without asking. I'm Lena, she said finally. I figured I should tell you before something happens. Cold shivers crawled up my arms. Tell me what? She leaned closer. You've heard it, the whistle. My blood iced. How do you? Everyone near the woods hears it. She whispered. But only some people hear their name. I swallowed hard. So what is it? Some psycho in the woods? A hermit? A bear someone raised wrong? Lena shook her head slowly. It's the line keeper. I stared. That's the dumbest name I've ever. It's not a name. It's a job. Her eyes were trembling. Someone or something walks the border between our world and what's past the tree line. Like a monster? No. Worse. She took a breath. It used to be human. I felt the cafeteria noise fading around us. What does it want? I whispered. She hesitated. It wants the kids born on the wrong year. I blinked. What does that even mean? In Ashwood Ridge, she said quietly. Every 13 years, one kid is marked. One kid the woods call back. They say it started before the town existed. They say. She stopped. Because a shadow fell over the table. A teacher. Mr. Hensley. Lunch is outside today, he said. Let's go. But he didn't look at me. He looked at Lena. With a warning. Like he knew exactly what she was telling me. And didn't want her to. 2 days later, the town went silent. A 7th grader named Paul Wren didn't show up to school. By noon, people were whispering. By 8th period, teachers looked shaken. By dismissal, police cars were parked outside. Dad picked me up early. What's going on? I asked. Missing kid, he said quietly. They're searching the woods. I felt a chill climb up my spine. Which woods? Dad didn't answer for a second. Then, the ones behind our house. I stiffened. Dad. He gripped the steering wheel harder. They think he wandered off. Snowstorm last night. Easy to get turned around. But I remembered something Lena said. Every 13 years, one kid. Marked. Did anyone hear? Whistling last night? I whispered. Dad didn't respond. He didn't have to. I already knew. That night, I woke to a harsh wind shaking the windows. Except the trees weren't moving. The wind wasn't real. What I actually heard, was breathing. Right outside my bedroom wall. Slow. Deep. Wet. Like lungs that hadn't practiced in a long time. Then, tap. 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 Not on the window. On the siding. Right beside my bed. My hands shook as I lifted the curtain. Snow. Nothing but snow. No. There. Footprints. Leading straight from the woods. Up to the house. Stopping below my window. And next to them, another set. Bare feet. Huge. Deep. Sunken like whoever made them weighed far too much. The breath outside stopped. The whistle began. Low. Long. Closer than ever. I ran to Dad's room shaking. Dad, something's outside, Dad. Wake up, Dad. He shot up, eyes wide, grabbing my arms. What happened? Evan. What? I pulled him to the window. The footprints were still there. His face drained of color. Jesus Christ. Do you believe me now? I choked out. He swallowed. Hard. Then grabbed his phone. I'm calling the police. But when they arrived, the footprints were gone. Completely. Not even disturbed snow. The officer looked at Dad like he was a paranoid parent and wrote a half-hearted report. But when he thought I wasn't looking, he whispered to Dad, "Get him out of that house. Nobody should be that close to the Ashwood line." My blood ran cold. Dad's face stiffened. "What's the Ashwood line?" he demanded. The officer hesitated, then said, "Just keep your boy inside after dark." That's when Dad realized he couldn't deny anything anymore. After the police left, Dad locked every door, every window, then sat on the couch rubbing his temples. "Evan, there's something I didn't tell you." My stomach dropped. "What?" "When we were at Misty's diner, that man I talked to, he said something." I sat beside him. Dad's voice grew low. He said, "That house wasn't empty when you moved in." My chest tightened. "What does that?" And then he said, "It'll come for the boy first." The room spun. "Jesus, Dad, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to scare you." "Well, too late for that." Dad stood abruptly. "We're leaving this town." Hope surged in my chest. But then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then everything went black. Dad grabbed my arm. "Stay close." A soft sound drifted from the kitchen. Not a whistle. A voice. "Ivan, come outside." Dad froze. His grip tightened until it hurt. The voice came again. Just a step past the trees. Dad whispered, panic cracking his voice. "Don't listen to it." But the voice wasn't talking to him. "It's your year, Evan." I felt something inside my chest. Not fear. Not panic. Recognition. Like something ancient was whispering. "Come home." Dad shook me hard. "Hey, stay with me. Evan, look at me." The voice faded. The power returned. The house went still. But I couldn't unhear the last words it spoke. 13 years. 13 years. 13 years. I was 13. Dad started packing the next morning. We didn't argue. Didn't talk much. I think he knew he wasn't just running from sounds or shadows. He was running from something that wanted me. Badly. By evening, the car was loaded. We just had to get through one last night. Dad slept in my room, sitting upright in a chair with a baseball bat across his lap. We kept the lights on. Around 2 a.m., snow began falling heavy and thick. Then, crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps in the yard. Dad stood, bat raised, eyes locked on the window. I held my breath. The whistle came again. But this time, there were two whistles. One long, one shorter. A call, and an answer. Dad whispered, "Stay behind me." But I moved to the window. I don't know why. I don't know what pulled me, but when I looked out, my heart nearly stopped. Paul Rain, the missing kid, was standing at the tree line, barefoot, covered in snow, eyes pale and glassy like he wasn't fully himself. And behind him, a tall figure, the same one I'd seen on the first night, skin stretched thin, arms too long, face shadowed under something like an old hood, its breath fogging the air in long, slow exhales. Dad grabbed me, move away from the window, but before he could pull me back, Paul stepped forward, his lips parted, a strangled voice choked out. "Help me." Dad lunged for the door. I grabbed him. "No, Dad, no, it wants you to..." Too late. He yanked the door open. A blast of cold wind hit us. Dad shouted, "Paul, come here, come to me." But Paul didn't move. The figure behind him did, slowly, towering, blocking the trees behind it like it was part of them. Dad took one step off the porch, snow crunching under his boot. The world felt like it held its breath. The figure raised a long, fingerless hand and pointed at me. Not Dad, me. Dad screamed, "Run, Ivan." But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Something tugged in my chest. A pull, a command. "Come." Dad grabbed me around the waist, dragging me backward. The figure stepped forward. Paul collapsed into the snow. The woods roared like something waking up. Dad slammed the door shut, and everything went silent, completely silent. No footsteps, no voice, no breathing, just silence. And then, a whisper at the window. "Next snow, you walk the line." We left before dawn. Didn't bother packing anything else. Didn't bother telling the school. Didn't bother telling anyone. Dad pushed the car as fast as it would go down Marrow Lane. But as we passed June Porter's house, she stood outside in the cold wearing pajamas and slippers. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just said, loud enough to hear through the glass, "It won't follow you past the state line. Keep driving." Dad didn't question it. We sped out of Ashwood Ridge like the road was on fire. We stopped only once to breathe, to cry, to make ourselves believe we actually escaped. Dad hugged me so hard my ribs hurt. "I'm never letting them take you," he whispered. Never. I believed him. For a while. I'm 26 now. Dad and I never went back. We changed our names, moved across the country. We don't talk about Ashwood Ridge. We don't talk about the line. But last week, a letter arrived. No return address, no stamp, no handwriting, just a plain white envelope. Inside was a single scrap of paper, with 4 words, "Snow falls tomorrow night." I moved to the window. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy, waiting, and faintly, from somewhere far off. I swear I heard it. The whistle, calling me back, calling me home. I didn't plan on ever telling this story, not to my wife, not to my brother, not to anyone. But sometimes life hands you moments that cling to you so tightly that you can't brush them off, no matter how much time passes. And when those moments keep you awake at 3 a.m., staring at your ceiling and replaying every detail, you eventually give up and write them down. I guess I should start with who I am before I get to what happened. My name is Luca Ferrillo, and for most of my life I was just a second-generation restaurant kid trying to keep my father's legacy afloat. My dad, Gianni, came to Chicago from Naples at 21 with $20, a butcher knife, and a chain-smoking habit. He built a small Italian place on the south side, a little hole in the wall joint where people said the smell of simmering tomatoes could guide you home after midnight. When he died, the restaurant fell to me. I took pride in it. I lived there, practically. But the restaurant world changed, and running a physical place became more like surviving a war zone. Grubhub margins, staffing shortages, rent climbing every month was a new headache. I have 2 kids, and the math just wasn't mathing anymore. I started looking around at other towns, places where life moved at a slower pace and people still valued sitting down for a meal instead of eating in their car in a Target parking lot. That's what put me on the road to a town called Redwater Grove, a place I should have never stepped foot in. Redwater Grove didn't show up in any best Midwest towns to move to lists. It didn't show up anywhere, actually. It was one of those towns you only knew existed because you accidentally passed a faded exit sign on the interstate. I wasn't planning to stop there originally. My plan was to visit a place about 30 miles north, where someone told me the mayor practically begged new family businesses to come in. But I got hungry, took the wrong turn, and figured the detour wouldn't hurt. The minute I drove into Redwater Grove, I noticed something off. Small-town America is usually all the same. Hardware store, antique shop, 2 churches minimum, maybe a bowling alley if they're feeling fancy. And people, lots of people. Folks sweeping porches, kids on bikes, old men arguing over scratch-off tickets. But Redwater Grove looked like the set of a movie filmed before the actors arrived. Not empty. Deserted. The houses were there, clean, maintained. Cars sat in driveways. Lights were on in living rooms. But nobody was outside. Not one person on the sidewalks. Not one car driving past. It felt like walking into a house after everyone suddenly stepped out of the room. All right. Little weird, I muttered to myself. That's when the hunger hit harder. So I parked in front of a diner, the kind with an old neon sign flickering over a metal awning. The place was called Ridgeview Eats, and I swear to God the neon made a buzzing sound like a trapped bee. There were cars in the lot, but when I stepped inside, only one booth was occupied, and the people sitting there froze like I'd interrupted something deadly serious. A middle-aged woman in a blue cardigan stopped stirring her coffee and stared at me like I'd walked into her house uninvited. The man across from her, a thin guy with droopy eyes and a stiff jaw, didn't blink. I tried a smile. "Afternoon, folks." They said nothing. Not even a nod. The woman lowered her eyes. The man took a slow sip of coffee without looking away from me, then whispered something under his breath. I didn't catch it, but I felt it. It wasn't friendly. "Okay," I whispered, turning toward the counter. The waitress, a girl maybe in her 20s with a long braid, appeared from the back. Her name tag said, Mila. "Hey there," she said, voice soft and almost too calm. "You're, new. Just passing through." Stomach demanded a pit stop. She gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You should eat quick," Mila said. "Kitchen's closing early. It's barely noon." "Mm-hmm," she hummed. Still closin'. My brain clocked the strangeness, but hunger won. I ordered a turkey melt. It came out fast. Too fast. Almost like they wanted me gone. Halfway through eating, I tried making small talk. "So what's Redwater Grove like?" Mila's face froze for a fraction of a second. "It's home," she said quietly. "But it's pretty empty outside. Folks out at an event or..." She cut me off sharply. "People stay in on Saturdays." "All of them?" Another unnatural pause. "It's just how we do things around here." Her voice had an edge to it, not angry, not rude, just warning. I ate the rest in silence. When I went to pay, Mila leaned in closer and spoke in a voice so soft I barely heard it over the hum of the ice machine. "You should get gas before you leave town. The station near the outskirts. And then you should keep driving." I blinked. "Why?" She swallowed. "Don't stay after dark." Before I could ask anything else, she walked away. No goodbye. No have a nice day. Just gone. As I stepped outside, the sky had clouded over, turning the whole town a flat gray. I swear the air felt thicker. I checked Google Maps, my phone's battery at 27%, and sure enough, there was a gas station on the edge of town called Hawthorne Fuel. What caught my attention, though, was something across the street. A man, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk. Gray jacket, jeans, boots coated in dust. He wasn't doing anything. Not walking, not waiting, not checking a phone. Just staring at me. Expression totally blank. I gave a polite nod. He didn't move. "Okay, this place is weird as hell," I muttered, climbing into my car. When I pulled out of the diner lot and drove past him, he turned his head slowly, following me with his eyes like a rotating security camera. I didn't like the way it made my stomach twist. I reached the gas station 15 minutes later. The place looked like someone had built it in 1974 and then forgot about it. 2 pumps, chipped paint, a little building with a low, sagging roof. A rusty bell above the door jangled as I pushed inside. An older man sat behind the counter, maybe in his late 60s. Gray beard, old flannel shirt, big hands that looked like he used to swing hammers his whole life. A small television played some old Western movie. He glanced up. "Afternoon," he said, voice warm. "Where ya headed?" "Back toward Chicago. Just passing through." "Mm-hmm." He nodded. "Ya ain't from around here?" "Nope." He smiled politely. "Pump's old. Might tick up slow. Don't worry about it." I chuckled. "I don't mind cheap gas." That's when he froze. Not a big freeze. Just stillness. Like someone paused him with a remote. Then he spoke, voice lower. "You ain't staying, right?" "No, sir." "You looking at moving here?" Something about his tone made my throat tighten. "Just exploring some options," I said cautiously. That's when his friendly expression vanished. Completely. The warmth drained from his face like someone pulled a plug. He leaned forward, eyes shining, not angry, not rude. Terrified. In a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Don't move here." My heart thumped once hard. What?" I managed. The old man swallowed, eyes flicking to the side like someone might be listening. "I'm telling you for your own sake. Don't stay. Don't buy land. Don't come back. Not even for the gas prices." My mouth went dry. Before I could ask anything, a woman appeared from the back. A thin woman, hair tied up tight, wearing a faded green sweater. She must have been his wife. She looked between us sharply. "Leon," she snapped. "What are you doing?" He shut down instantly, like a kid caught swearing in church. "Nothing, Mar," he muttered, turning away. She approached the counter, giving me a tight smile. "Can we help you with anything else?" "No, I was just paying for gas." "Well then," she said, "you'd best be on your way." Her voice wasn't rude. It was fearful. As she walked back toward the office, the old man Leon still wouldn't look at me. I stepped outside, hands shaking just a little, and as I turned to look back at the station, both of them were standing in the window, staring at me, not waving, not smiling, just watching. I got into my car. I left, and I didn't breathe normally again until the gas station vanished behind a curve in the road. The weirdest part? The deeper I drove toward the highway, the emptier the roads became. No other cars, no animals, no nothing. Like the town wasn't part of the world anymore. After 10 minutes, I reached a four-way intersection. The light was blinking red. I slowed, looked both ways. That's when I saw her, Mila, the waitress, standing on the corner. Her braid was messy now, her breathing hard like she'd run the whole way. She ran up to my window and knocked rapidly. I rolled it down halfway. "Jesus, are you okay?" She glanced over her shoulder. "You gotta go," she whispered harshly. "Like right now." "You shouldn't have talked to Leon. They don't like outsiders asking questions." "Who's they?" She looked terrified. "You need to leave. I'm not supposed to be out here." "Who told you?" She swallowed and grabbed the doorframe. "Everyone." Her eyes welled with tears. "Please, don't stop in Redwater again. Don't look back. Don't try to figure it out. Just go." Before I could say another word, she stepped back and hurried away, running toward a cluster of trees behind an abandoned house. I rolled up my window, heart pounding. I pressed the gas. I didn't look back. The whole drive home, I kept trying to rationalize it. Small towns are weird. People are private. Maybe I caught them on some strange holiday or local ritual day. Maybe they had some town meeting and didn't want strangers poking around. Maybe I overthought it. But that night, when I told my wife everything from the diner to the gas station to the terrified old man, she didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss it. She went pale. "Luca, you need to forget that town." "I don't know if I can," I whispered. I didn't sleep that night, because even in my own bed, I felt watched. 3 months passed. I kept telling myself it was just a weird day, weird people, weird vibes. But the thing that kept bothering me was the fear in Mila's voice. Not discomfort, not rudeness, fear. One night in early winter, I dreamt I was driving back through Redwater Grove. The streets were dark, the houses boarded up, the neon sign of Ridgeview Eats flickering wildly. And as I drove past the diner, I saw Mila standing on the sidewalk, her braid whipping in the wind. She mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. I woke up sweating. I told myself I would never go back. Never. But life doesn't care about promises. A year later, I was driving along I-88, coming back from a food supplier meeting. Snow was coming down hard. My GPS glitched, rerouted me, and before I realized what was happening, I saw the exit sign. Redwater Grove 2 miles. The muscles in my hands tightened on the wheel. No, I whispered. No, 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 not again. I tried to steer away. The car skidded on ice just slightly, forcing me to slow down. I pulled into the breakdown lane, heart hammering against my ribs. The snow grew heavier, making visibility worse. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to take that exit. But as I tried to inch forward again, a figure appeared in the snow, standing on the shoulder, facing my car. I slammed the brakes. My headlights illuminated a face I recognized instantly. Mila. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner, her eyes sunken. She looked like she hadn't slept in months. I rolled the window halfway down, shivering. Mila? What? She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She whispered, "You came back." I didn't mean to. My GPS. You need to go. I know. I'm trying. No, she said sharply. You need to go now, before they see you. My throat tightened. Who? She stepped closer, breath visible in the cold. They don't let people leave twice. Her voice trembled on the last word. I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean? She looked back toward the tree line behind her. They're already watching. I followed her gaze, and that's when I saw them. Dozens of shapes, standing between the trees, not moving, just silhouettes in the snowfall, still as statues. I couldn't see their faces, but I felt their eyes. I could feel them as clearly as the cold in my lungs. I whispered, "Jesus Christ." Mila leaned in, her voice cracking. "Drive, Luca. Don't slow down. Don't stop. Don't ever come back. If you do, they won't let you leave a third time." My body moved before my brain did. I hit the gas. The wheels screamed on the ice. The car lurched forward. I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't tell anyone about seeing Mila again. Not my wife. Not my kids. Not my brother. Some nights I lie awake and replay her words, her trembling breath fogging in the cold air, the shapes behind her, unmoving. I checked Google Maps a few months ago. Redwater Grove isn't listed anymore. The exit sign is still there, but the town name is gone. Just a blank green board with missing letters. I don't know what happened. I don't know what they are. I don't know why Mila warned me again. But sometimes late at night I swear I see silhouettes in the trees across the street from my house. Not moving, just watching. And every time I blink, I wonder if Redwater Grove followed me home. I never thought I'd start my adult life over in a town I'd never heard of. But life doesn't really ask what you want. It just picks you up and drops you wherever the hell it feels like. When I look back now, I can trace the beginning of everything, every wrong turn, every stupid moment of hope right to the day I drove into Brenton Hollow, a place so small that even Google Maps seemed confused about why I wanted to go there. I moved because I needed work. Simple as that. After my dad died the year before, leaving behind more debt than memories, and after my girlfriend of 3 years walked out on me for someone who didn't drown in stress all day, I packed whatever I could fit into the back seat of my 03 Buick and left Street Louis behind me. I was 27, tired, broke, and weirdly hopeful. I had landed a job as a maintenance tech at the Clearwater Processing Plant, a water treatment facility near Brenton Hollow. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep me afloat. The plant sat outside town, surrounded by woods and long, flat farmland that seemed to stretch forever. I told myself it was a new start. My mom told me it sounded like exile. Maybe she was right. "Welcome to Brenton Hollow," the sign said. Population, 1,324. The town had one gas station, one diner, one grocery store that looked like it hadn't been updated since Clinton was in office, and a half-dozen streets with small houses spaced far apart. The air smelled like cut hay and diesel fuel. You could see the horizon in all directions, flat, empty, endless. I'd rented a tiny yellow house on the outskirts, next to a wide stretch of fields that the locals called the Flats. Standing there, the wind pushing across the field sounded like whispers sliding through long grass. When I arrived to grab the keys, the landlord, an older guy named Sherwood Sher Halterman, greeted me with a smile that seemed welded onto his face. "You're the new one," he said. "We don't get many new ones out here anymore. Used to, back in the early 2000s. But times changed. Folks don't stick around like they used to. Good to meet you," I said. "Don't tell me," he interrupted. "You look like a Colby, but that's probably wrong. It's Ian." Ian." He nodded like he'd heard that name 20 times that morning. "Well, Ian, this place is quiet, real quiet. We like it like that. No troublemakers, no drifters, no noise. People just live their lives." It was harmless enough, but something about the way he said "no noise" stuck with me. Almost like a warning. My first night at the house, I slept with the windows open because the heat was unbearable. Crickets chirped, distant train horns echoed, and every now and then, something shuffled in the fields. Probably a raccoon, I told myself. Probably. Around midnight, I woke up to 3 knocks at my door. Not loud, not frantic, just slow. Knock, knock, knock. My stomach dropped. I wasn't expecting anyone. I didn't know anyone. "Hello?" I called out, standing near the door but not opening it. Silence. I walked to the window, gently sliding the curtain. No one. Just the empty dirt road and the long stretch of dark fields. I shut the window, locked it, and told myself it was probably a tree branch or some kid messing around. Small towns get bored, right? Still, sleep didn't come easy. My second day in town, I stopped by the diner for lunch. The waitress, a woman in her 50s named Lynn, greeted me with a friendly but too curious smile. "You're the new boy in Sher Halterman's place, ain't ya?" she asked, pouring me coffee. "Yeah, just moved in." She lowered her voice. "Well, welcome. I guess. You'll see," she said under her breath. Then she added brightly, "Hash browns?" A man at the counter, middle-aged, sunburned, wearing a Seedco cap, turned halfway toward me. "You hear anything last night?" he asked. My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Sometimes the wind carries sounds funny across the flats. Folks hear knocking, banging, voices, whatever." I stared. "Knocking? Don't think much of it," he said quickly. "Weather, animals, sound travels weird out here." But the way he avoided my eyes made my skin crawl. As I paid the bill, Lynn leaned in and whispered, "Don't answer the door at night." My throat went dry. "Why?" She glanced toward the window, toward the fields. "People get nervous out here after dark, that's all." At the Clearwater facility, I met the crew. Ray, my supervisor, quiet and steady. Jared, a younger guy, nervous energy. Dale, a retired Army vet who walked with a limp and smoked like he hated his lungs. During lunch on my first week, I asked them about the town. Ray smirked. "Brenton Hollow, it's fine." Jared snorted. "Fine? Come on, you know damn well it ain't fine." Ray shot him a warning look. "Let it go." But Jared leaned toward me. "You're living near the flats, right? Out by that yellow house?" "Yeah." Jared's voice dropped. "You hear anything yet?" I hesitated. "I heard knocking the first night." Ray slammed his metal lunchbox shut. "Enough of that crap," he said sharply. "We don't scare new folks. It's rude." "Rude?" Jared muttered. "It's rude to let 'em go in blind." Dale exhaled smoke and looked at me with pale, tired eyes. "Listen," he said. "This town, it's not dangerous. Not like Chicago or anything. But folks here are jumpy, superstitious. Give it time. You'll get used to it." But I could tell. He didn't believe a word he was saying. A few days later, after a late shift, I returned home around 11 p.m. A note was taped to my front door. Don't open your door after dark. Not for anyone. A neighbor. No name. No explanation. I stepped back, scanning the empty road. The porch light flickered. The wind carried faint whispers through the fields. For the first time, I regretted moving there. One night, around 1 a.m., I woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside. Someone was walking along the road. I peeked through the blinds. A young woman, maybe early 22nds, barefoot, wearing a white tank top and jeans, was standing by my mailbox. Her head was tilted, like she was listening to something in the dark. I tapped the window. "Hey, are you okay?" She jerked her head toward me. Her eyes were wide, haunted. She shook her head violently, mouthing, "Don't open the door." Then she backed away, walking faster and faster until she vanished into the dark. The next morning, when I asked Cher about it, he stiffened. "Girl?" he repeated. "We don't have any young girls living out that way." She looked like she needed help. He shook his head. "You see something in the dark out here. You ignore it, son. That's how folks stay safe." "Safe from what?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Just remember what I said." Curious and on edge, I decided to dig through the local library. An older librarian named Phyllis eyed me suspiciously. "You're the boy in the yellow house," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." I wanted to look into the town's history. Her expression tightened. "Why?" "I'm just curious." She sighed, walked into the back room, and returned with a thin blue binder. "Read it in here," she said. "Don't take it home." The binder contained clippings from old newspapers. Missing persons, mostly. One headline made my blood run cold. "Missing family of 3 in Bradley County, 1,989. Another, "A couple found dead near the flats, no suspects." And another, "Local girl disappears after knock at door. What happened to them?" I whispered. Phyllis shook her head. "This place has seen more loss than it deserves. That's all." "Was anyone arrested?" Her eyes hardened. "No, and you shouldn't go poking around. Brenton Hollow don't forget, and it don't forgive." Chills spread down my arms. 2 weeks into my new life, I came home from a night shift and instantly sensed something off. My front door was locked. The windows were locked. Nothing looked disturbed, but the bedroom smelled wrong. A smell like old sweat and damp clothes. Then I saw it. My closet door was half open. I never leave it open. "Hello," I said quietly, gripping a wrench I'd brought inside. No answer. I yanked the door open. Empty. But something small and white was tucked into the corner. A scrap of paper. I unfolded it with trembling hands. "I saw you. Don't get involved." My heart hammered so hard I thought I'd pass out. Someone had been in my house. Someone who didn't want me asking questions. I should have packed my bags right then and there. But stupidity or pride kept me rooted. It happened a week later. A storm rolled across the fields, heavy rain battering the windows. The wind howled like something alive. I was trying to distract myself with TV when I heard it. A scream. High, sharp, desperate. It came from somewhere out in the fields. I bolted to the window. Lightning flickered. For half a second, I saw something moving. A shape. Human. Crawling. "Jesus," I whispered. Another scream. My hand went to the doorknob. Then I remembered the notes, the warnings, the girl. "Don't open your door after dark." The scream stopped abruptly. Cut off. Like someone silenced them. I backed away slowly, shaking. All night, the wind battered the house, carrying with it faint whispers and the sound of something dragging through the fields. The next morning, I went to the diner. I needed answers. Lynn took one look at me and set down my coffee with a trembling hand. "You heard it, didn't you?" "Yes." She sat across from me like she couldn't hold it in anymore. "People disappear around here," she whispered. "Always have. Folks say they see something moving through the fields at night. sometimes knocking on doors, sometimes calling out for help. But it ain't help they need. What do you mean? She swallowed. They say, whatever it is, it looks like people who used to live here, people who went missing. My skin crawled. So, like a ghost? No, she said quickly. No ghosts. Nothing like that. Whatever's out there is alive, and it ain't right. What happens if you open the door? She stared into her coffee. Then you become one of the ones folks hear screaming. That evening, just before dusk, as I sat on the porch, I saw someone standing way out in the tall grass. A man, not moving, just watching my house. A cold panic flooded me. I stepped inside and locked the door. When I looked again, he was closer, 10 feet from where he stood before. No sound, no footsteps, just closer. I shut the blinds, heart pounding. I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., it came. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Don't open the door, no matter what you hear. Then a voice outside. Ian, open up, buddy. It's me, Ray. My blood froze. Ray, my supervisor. What are you doing here? I called through the door. No answer. Then, let me in, please, something's wrong. But something was wrong with his voice. Too flat. Too calm. Not human enough. My phone buzzed again. That's not Ray. Then, outside. Ian, open the goddamn door. A hard slam rattled the frame. I backed away, heart slamming against my ribs. The voice changed. Deeper. Almost a growl. Open the door. I grabbed a kitchen knife, shaking violently. The door handle jiggled. Turned. Stopped. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow. Walking away. I didn't breathe for another full minute. When sunlight finally broke, I opened the door cautiously. Something was sitting on my porch. A tooth. Human. My stomach twisted so violently I almost threw up. Someone or something wanted me to know that last night wasn't a dream. I drove straight to the plant. I didn't care that it was my day off. Ray was there, alive, drinking coffee. You okay, kid? He asked. What time did you get home last night? He frowned. Same as always. Why? You didn't come to my house? Hell no. I don't go anywhere near those flats after dark. I felt sick. So what's out there? Ray hesitated. Then he said quietly, this town buries things, secrets, crimes, people. Over the years, it all soaks into the land. You live here long enough, you feel it. The flats remember everything done on them. And sometimes, it don't stay buried. My throat felt tight. So what do? He didn't blink. You get out, before it takes a liking to you. I decided to leave the next morning. Packed everything, cleaned the house, set my alarm for 6 a.m. But that night, the knocking came again. Faster, harder, like fists slamming the wood. Knock, 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 knock. My phone lit up. Don't open. If you open it, you won't leave this town. The knocking stopped. Then came a voice I knew too well. My father's. But my father had been dead for over a year. Ian. His voice, soft, broken. Exactly like I remembered. Open the door, son, I need to see you. Tears stung my eyes. I sank to my knees. His voice trembled. Please, please open the door. I covered my ears. No, no, no. Then the voice changed, became deeper. Wrong. A sound like something chewing words instead of speaking them. Open the door. I curled into a ball on the floor, shaking violently. Hours later, the sky finally lightened. The voice stopped. The knocking stopped. Only the wind remained. I walked out of that house at sunrise, threw my bags into the Buick, and drove until I reached the highway. I never looked back. I never went back. A month later, the house burned down. Electrical fire, they said. 2 months later, Cher Halterman died. Heart attack. 3 months later, a news article popped up. A missing man. Last seen near the flats. I deleted the article. I moved to Chicago, got a different job, tried to build a normal life. But sometimes, in the early morning quiet, when the wind shifts in just the wrong way, I swear I still hear it. Soft, slow, patient. Knock, knock, knock. I never thought moving to a small town would actually change the way I slept at night. I grew up thinking sleep was just something your body did, something automatic, like blinking or breathing. But after what happened in Hartwell Ridge, I learned sleep isn't automatic at all. It's a privilege, and some people lose it forever. Before I tell you what happened, I gotta explain why I even moved out there. Otherwise, none of this'll make sense. My name's Reed Halper, and at the time all this went down, I was 27, broke as hell, and holding on to the last thread of my sanity. My dad had passed about 8 months before, and the only real thing he left behind was a stack of debt big enough to choke a horse, plus a busted truck he loved more than he ever loved paying bills. I was working at a garage outside Milwaukee, doing oil changes and inspections for folks who'd walk in talking to their phones like I wasn't even there. Rent was killing me. Life felt stuck, and grief had this weird way of making everything feel heavier than it should have been. Around June that year, my aunt called out of nowhere and said, "There's a property going up cheap in Hartwell Ridge. Real cheap. You ought to take a look if you're serious about starting over." Hartwell Ridge was one of those tiny Midwest towns Google Maps doesn't even spell check correctly. Barely 2,000 people, mostly old farmers and folks who never left. But it had the one thing I needed. Space. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I could breathe without neighbors stomping above me or ambulances blaring past at 3 a.m. So I went. And I swear, the second I rolled down into that town, something felt different. Not dangerous, not supernatural, just old. Like the place carried memories the land was tired of holding. The property was a beat-up 2-bedroom farmhouse sitting on just over an acre of land. A wreck, honestly. The backyard was half sunk and half overgrown. The porch was leaning like it wanted to lay down and die, and half the shingles were lying in the grass. But the price? Dirt cheap. Suspiciously cheap. The owner was a guy named Harold Kemp, who met me there wearing overalls and a cap that looked older than both of us combined. He spit tobacco into the dirt every other sentence, and kept saying stuff like, "Yup, place just needs a lil elbow grease," which is usually country folk language for this place has problems I don't want to explain out loud. Still, I saw potential. I imagined fixing the porch, repainting the siding, maybe making it into the kind of home my old man always dreamed of but never managed to give us. So, like an idiot, and I say idiot with love, I bought the place. That decision changed everything. I moved in late July, right when the Midwest heat feels like someone wrapped the world in a wet blanket. On move-in day, this girl from next door wandered over to say hi. Her name was Sadie Holcomb, probably mid-20s like me, wearing cutoff shorts and a band tee, her hair pulled into a messy knot. "You're the new guy, huh?" she said, leaning against my fence like she'd known me for years. "Guess so," I said, trying to be. She laughed a little. "Try not to let Hartwell Ridge scare you off. Folks here get twitchy about newcomers." "Yeah? What like? They stare at me weird in the grocery store?" "Pretty much exactly that," she said with a shrug. "But don't mind them. You keep to yourself. They'll get used to you." Something about her tone told me she didn't entirely believe that. We talked for maybe 15 minutes, weather, the property, how the house used to sit empty for years. Nothing major. But before she left, she pointed at the backyard and said, "Just be careful digging back there." That threw me off. "Why?" "Flooded septic tank years ago," she said quickly. "That's what folks say anyway. Just watch your step." She left after that, and a weird, quiet tension settled over me. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first hint. The first sign. The second sign came the next morning. My plan was simple. Fix the interior first, clean the yard later. But the heat was brutal inside. Felt like the walls trapped the sun inside, so I dragged a shovel out to level the yard instead. I figured if I dug up the old soil and brought in new topsoil, maybe the backyard wouldn't look like a crime scene. The dirt back there felt wrong. It wasn't normal soil, it had patches of gray clay mixed with something powdery that didn't look like dirt at all. Every few inches my shovel hit something solid, like rocks or broken boards. I assumed it was old building debris from whoever lived here before. An hour in, sweat pouring off me, I hit something bigger, something that made a deep thunk that vibrated up the shovel's handle. Probably a stupid log, I muttered, jamming the shovel under it. I pried it loose, but when it rolled out of the dirt, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a log. It was bone. Thick, long. Too long for any deer I'd ever seen. I'd worked at a garage, not a vet clinic, but I'd grown up in the Midwest. People hit deer all the time. I knew what those bones looked like. This wasn't that. Before I could talk myself into thinking I was overreacting, something else slid down the dirt incline, another bone. Smaller, not broken, intact. Then another. Then something round, something sunken. I froze so hard I forgot how to blink, because staring up at me from the dirt was a skull. Not an animal, not a pet, human. My first instinct was to step back. My second was to swear under my breath, long, low, panicked. I felt like the air around me got thick, like the whole backyard leaned in and watched what I was going to do next. I knew what the right thing was, call the sheriff, but a part of me didn't want to touch my phone. As if calling someone made it more real. As if disturbing that skull was like waking up whatever history this land was hiding. Still, I forced myself to pull out my phone and dial the Hartwell Ridge Sheriff's Office. Sheriff O'Malley speaking. The voice crackled. Hey, my name's Reed Halper. I'm at the old farmhouse on Pine Ledge Road. I think I found something. What kind of something? I swallowed. Bones. A skull. Looks human. Silence. A long one. Then, stay where you are. Don't touch anything. I agreed. But staying put was the hardest part. Because as I stood there staring at the cracked eye socket of that skull, a weird, cold breeze cut through the humid summer air. Made no sense. No wind all morning. Then cold like I stepped into a walk-in freezer. That's when I heard Sadie's voice behind me. What the hell did you dig up? I spun so fast I dropped my phone. She stood at the fence, eyes wide, face pale, hands gripping the wood like she was keeping herself from stepping closer. How long were you there? I asked. Long enough, she breathed. You weren't supposed to dig back there. The sheriff came with 2 deputies. They taped off my yard with bright yellow tape that looked cartoonish against the old farmhouse backdrop. Sheriff O'Malley was a tall man with a thick mustache and the kind of posture that said he used to be military. He talked slow, like each word had to filter through suspicion before it reached his mouth. You said you just bought this place? He asked, walking beside me. 2 weeks ago, I said. You dig anything up before today? No. See anyone around the property since you moved in? Just my neighbor, Sadie. He looked over at her. She stiffened, crossed her arms, and looked away. The deputies dug for hours. I watched from my porch, my stomach doing flips. Every few minutes one of them would stand up, wipe sweat off their necks, and whisper something to the sheriff. He'd nod, say something back, then glance up at me like I don't trust this guy, but I don't think he did it. They pulled up bones, lots of them, too many. At one point a deputy muttered, Jesus Christ. And I knew it wasn't good. Around 4 in the afternoon, they called in the county. Trucks, equipment, tents, like a miniature war zone sprouted in my backyard. I kept pacing the porch until I noticed Sadie sitting on the steps, elbows on her knees, staring at the ground. You okay? I asked. No, she said flatly. You know something about this place? She hesitated. Then, without looking at me, she said, People in Hartwell Ridge don't talk about the Meyer family. Who? She exhaled hard. Exactly. I sat beside her. She didn't move away, but she didn't look at me either. The Meyers lived here before I was born, she said. They owned half this street. Old talk says the dad went crazy. Some folks say he hurt the family. Some say he buried them. Some say he took off. Every version's different, depending on who's talking. But nobody ever figured out the truth. And the sheriff, he knows something, she said quietly. Everyone older than 40 does, but they ain't saying. I looked toward the tents. Are you telling me these bones might be? She cut me off sharply. I'm telling you, this town buries its secrets deeper than any grave. The investigation went on for days. The county set up lights that glowed through my bedroom window like alien beams. Every night I heard the soft scraping of shovels, the quiet murmurs of men who didn't want to admit what they were finding. One night, maybe the third, I heard a deputy mutter, "That's gotta be a kid's bone." Another snapped, "Keep your damn voice down." I couldn't sleep. Even when I closed my eyes, I saw that skull, that hollow socket staring at me, like it wanted to tell me something. On the fifth night, I heard something else. Footsteps. Not on the gravel where the county crews worked. Not on my porch. No. In the yard. Behind the house. Slow. Soft. Crunching the loose soil I'd dug up myself. I shot out of bed, heart hammering. I grabbed my flashlight, threw on boots, and rushed out the back door. "Hello?" I yelled. The beam of my flashlight swept across the yard. Nothing but overturned earth and the metal fencing they'd put up around the dig. "Anybody out here?" Then I heard it again. From the far corner. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I swung the light. And for half a second, I swear on everything, I saw someone. A silhouette. Tall. Thin. Still. But the second the light hit it, it vanished. Not ran. Not ducked. Just gone. I stood there shaking, telling myself I was exhausted, overworked, imagining things. But the next morning, while county crews packed up equipment, one deputy asked me, "You had someone trespassing last night?" I froze. "Why?" He held up a boot print. A fresh one. Not mine. Not county issued. And way too big. Days turned to a week. The county left. The sheriff warned me that more tests needed to be done, but that the area was clear for now. Clear. Right. Because nothing felt clear. Not the land. Not the town. Not what was happening to me inside my own damn head. One evening, Sadie knocked on my door. Hard. Urgent. "You need to come with me," she said when I opened it. "To where?" "To someone who'll actually tell you the truth." I had nothing left to lose, so I followed her across the street into her uncle's house. Her uncle, Rory Holcomb, sat in a recliner with the air of a man who'd lived 10 lives and didn't care for any of them. He turned off the TV, looked me up and down, and said, "So you stirred up the Meyer place?" I swallowed. "I didn't mean to. You didn't have a choice. Boy, that ground was gonna spit those bones up sooner or later." "What happened there?" I asked. Rory scratched his beard and sighed. "You ever heard the expression, 'This town's built on other people's mistakes'?" "No." "Well, that farmhouse was one of them." Sadie sat beside him, her leg bouncing anxiously. Rory leaned forward. "Back in the 70s, there was a man named Jude Meyer. Quiet guy. Carved wood for a living. Had a wife, 2 kids. Folks said they kept to themselves too much. Something always felt off about him, but no one wanted to poke the bear. You know?" "Go on," I said. "Then one summer, they just disappeared. No moving trucks, no goodbyes, just gone. Sheriff back then said they probably skipped town, but people talked. Some said Jude killed him. Some said he buried him in the yard. Some said they were already dead long before they disappeared. So why didn't anyone dig or investigate?" Rory gave a bitter laugh. "This town doesn't dig unless it has to." Sadie added, "People here protect their own, even the bad ones." "So you're saying Jude killed his family?" "We're saying," Rory said slowly, "that whatever happened wasn't natural, and the land remembers. Sometimes too well." I felt my chest tighten. "I think someone's been in my yard at night." Sadie and Rory exchanged a look. "What kind of someone?" Rory asked. "A man. Tall. Thin. He disappears when I look at him." Rory's face hardened. "That ain't a person, son." I sucked in a deep breath. "Then what is it?" "The land doesn't like being disturbed," he said, "and sometimes it wakes what's been sleeping in it." I didn't want to believe any of this. Ghost stories, local legends, small-town paranoia. But the next night made belief irrelevant. Around 1 a.m., I woke to a scraping noise. Not outside. Inside. Like something dragging along the hallway floor. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by my bed. My heart hammered so hard it drowned out the sound for a moment. When I cracked open my bedroom door, the house breathed cold air straight into my face. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer. The scraping came again. From the kitchen, I stepped forward, gripping the bat, every nerve in my body alive with fear. When I reached the kitchen doorway, I saw something that still haunts me. The basement door, one I never used, was open. Wide open. The scraping wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from the basement stairs. Slow. Deliberate. Dragging. I pointed the flashlight down, and the beam hit something pale. A hand. Not flesh. Not alive. Bone. But it wasn't just a hand. It was an arm, and it was pulling itself up the steps. I stumbled back, crashed into the counter, dropped the flashlight. The beam spun across the walls, landed on something at the top of the staircase. A figure. Tall. Thin. Bones where a face should have been. And it spoke, but not out loud, not with sound. The voice hit the back of my skull like a whisper breathed directly into my brain. "You dug me up." I tried to run. I swear I tried. But my legs buckled, my lungs locked. Every instinct in my body said, "Don't move, don't breathe, don't look at it." The figure stepped onto the floor, bones clicking softly, its jaw hanging just slightly open like it couldn't decide if it was supposed to speak or scream. Then it lifted one hand and pointed at me. "You woke us." Plural. Us. I don't remember much after that. The fear hit me so hard I blacked out. I woke up outside. In the yard, Sheriff O'Malley stood over me, shouting my name. Daylight was breaking behind him, turning the world a faint blue. "Halper, stay with me." My throat felt like sandpaper. "What happened?" "You tell me," he said. "Your neighbor called in a panic saying she heard screaming." "Sadie." I turned to look at the ground and froze, because the patch of earth I had dug up weeks earlier, the place where they found all those bones, it was freshly disturbed again, but not by shovels, by something clawing its way out. Dozens of small impressions, finger marks, drag marks. Sheriff O'Malley saw the look on my face and said quietly, "We're sealing this whole property off again." I shook my head. "Sheriff, there's something down there?" He didn't answer. Didn't have to. His face said he already knew. They let me pack up my things 2 days later. I left most of it behind. When I gave Sadie my number, she hugged me tighter than I expected. "You're doing the right thing leaving," she whispered. "This town doesn't let go of its dead easy." I drove out of Hartwell Ridge with the rearview mirror tipped upward so I wouldn't have to see anything behind me. I didn't stop until I hit the Illinois border. Didn't breathe easy until weeks later. And I still don't sleep well. Because sometimes when I'm lying there with my eyes closed, I hear scraping, faint, distant, but real. And I know deep down, some things don't stay buried just because we stop digging. Some things follow. Some things remember. Some things wait. And whatever I woke in that yard, it's not done with me. Not yet.